Hi, this is Casey from the Alchemy Podcast. We're so happy that you're listening to my show. Me especially, because it's my show. And you will find all sorts of fun topics about religion, about science, about magic, real supernatural magic even. Yes, it's basically a Hogwarts lesson in an episode. But don't take my word for it. Catch me every single week, airing on Thursdays and Saturdays. You see? We're bidiurnal. Get it? Only if you speak Latin will you probably get it. I do speak a lot of Latin on my show. So catch me, Casey, and Alchemy every Thursday, and thank you for listening! Hey, this is Soul Bossa Nova by Quincy Jones from Mercury Stereo. Are you ready for 2 jokes at once this week? Here we go. And so the witch answers the door, and it's the installation wizard who says, "Did you call hex support? And the witch says, "I'm surprised you didn't use the Windows." Oh yeah. Stay tuned for Alchemy.
Bound together like a law of the rule. Every bit of space between the sun and the moon. Skin, mouth on mouth, earth and waters, north and south, yeah, soul to soul, back to life. We are the ones about to get it right. So much more to us than memories and time. A cosmic synergy that can't be defined. We're twin spirits with one mind. We're twin spirits with one mind. Oh, alchemy, alchemy. You and me is alchemy. It's happening, it's happening. Alchemy.
Hey everybody. It is 6:38 Pacific Standard Time on Thursday. Is it Thursday? It's Thursday the 2nd. Rabbit rabbit to everybody yesterday who knows what rabbit rabbit means. Oh yeah. How are you? Welcome to Alchemy. It is the umpteenth of May in the year of our... I'm sorry, is it May? No, it's June, the umpteenth of June, the month of Juno. Yeah! In the year of our Lord. Lordy lordy. 2023. Or, in the Roman numerals for AUC, if anybody cares about that, MMDCCLXXVI So, whatever that in... Actually, I don't even know what that would be. I'd have to sit there and figure that out mathematically with an abacus. That's an inside joke for some people. Anyway, so, welcome to Alchemy. We have, coming up here in just a few minutes, a very special guest. If it's June 1st, then Rabbit Rabbit. And kudos to everybody who knows what rabbit rabbit means. It's a Welsh thing. It's in Wales. In Wales, you have this saying that you say at the first of every single month called Rabbit Rabbit. And it's supposed to bring you good luck throughout the month. So Rabbit Rabbit to everybody for the first episode of our month of June. Things from Wales are as interesting as is the U.S. state that was once possibly going to be called the colony of New Wales. But it ended up becoming called Pennsylvania. And there's so many crazy cool alchemical things about Pennsylvania that I really love, including Pennsylvania's history with alchemists as their governors, including the Pennsylvania Dutch and the hex signs, which we might get into later, and also familial traditions. It is said that the witches in Pennsylvania keep their magics sort of like within the family, and they teach in the family through various means, and different families have different traditions. And I'm not sure what I would call my family, but my family certainly has had some very special ladies in it. Namely my grandmother and my great-grandmother. My great-grandmother, Melva, was and remains a pip. And my grandmother, Romaine, is a great lady. Very sad, but both are post-incarnate right now, which is very sad, but I wanted to learn more about my family's history after England and in the United States. And so I thought, well, the best way that I can learn about that is if I talk to someone else who knows my grandmother and my great-grandmother better than I do. And so here on the show, we wanted for a long time to have a special guest. And I wanted to pick my first special guest rather well. I wanted it to be someone who had a big impact for me in my life. And I thought, well, in alchemy, you have to reach into your history and start there as your starting point. Rabbit today, because today is the first day. Well, actually, it's the first day of our broadcasting for the month of June. And the month of Juno, everybody. And it is traditional in the country of Wales, which is part of my ancestry. We're Welsh as well as English. Is traditional to say rabbit in the first of the month, and it's supposed to bring you good luck. And so we say rabbit here on Alchemy to you and to everybody. Now, New Wales is the state that you probably know today as Pennsylvania, or the Commonwealth, actually. It was originally going to be called New Wales by its founder, William Penn, but at the request of the king, was changed to Pennsylvania, who thought that Mr. Penn was being a little modest. Pennsylvania has had a very strange history when it comes to things like witches, when it comes to things like the Pennsylvania Dutch, the hex signs we're probably going to get into later in the episode. And Pennsylvania has had a history of alchemist governors in its past. It's basically an alchemist haven in Pennsylvania, and that really has to do with the Pennsylvania Dutch. The Germanic region in Europe being one of the places that the alchemists who were fleeing Rome at the time of the Christian takeover, they went to Germany, they went to a number of places, they went to Persia. And so those traditions, in some instances, carried on through something called crypto alchemy or crypto paganism. And pagan is a word that the Roman Christians came up with that means in Latin the other, those who are not included. And it's actually rather sad. I try not to use it as much as I can, but their traditions, the, for lack of a better term, pagan traditions, carried on. That Roman state religion even carried on almost uninterrupted through the European settlements, through the Persian settlements, and to their colonies as well, including in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And so you have this tradition, and the Roman traditions reflected even in the hex signs, which are on barns in Pennsylvania. And in fact, when I lived in Pennsylvania, I grew up there, I was actually taken aback when I moved to Washington State, because Washington State has a good deal of barns, and I didn't see any hex signs, and I finally noticed, and someone said to me when I asked, where are your hex signs at? She said, "What are hex signs?" And that's when I realized, oh wow, they don't do that everywhere. But in alchemy, it is said that you have to reach into your history in order to, have your alchemical experience. One of the first things that you have to do in almost any endeavor is make a connection with your parents, make a connection with your history. And in my family, the Evans family, we have a number of very special people, and I was very interested in our history after we left England. I was able to research a lot of our ancestry, but I wasn't able to research as much of our more current histories. And so here to shed light on that is actually to kick off our first ever guest that we're going to have on the show. I thought, what better person than my own father to kick us off and to be the inaugural guest on the Alchemy podcast. And so here to talk about my grandmother and my great-grandmother, because he knows them better than I do, who are very special ladies, is my dad calling all the way in from Pennsylvania, where the current time there is probably about 10 o'clock at night, and thank you for staying up for me. Hi, Dad. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you.
Yes. Hi. So, everyone, this is my dad. My dad is he's a wonderful man. He is a carpenter, and So, Dad, tell some of the listeners a little bit about yourself, if you like.
Well, I was in the trucking industry for 25 years, and I got tired of that, and I got in the construction business.
All right. And what have
I
you?
am today.
Tell us about some of the things that you build.
Oh, I built a couple of commercials. Did a lot of remodeling.
Commercials?
Never built a new house.
What are commercials for our listeners who don't know? And I mean, I'm familiar with what you've done, and so I'm trying to get you to elaborate on that a little bit more. So, like, when you say commercials, what do you mean?
I built a couple of restaurants from the ground up, rebuilt.
And when you mean from the ground up, do you mean like those big concrete like things we were jackhammering that one summer when I was a kid?
Yeah, and all the I-beams you put in. You must remember that. You had the forklift down in the basement of the building at the lake.
I do. He means Harvey's Lake, which is the largest freshwater lake in Pennsylvania, which is a portion of the town I grew up in.
Largest natural lake in Pennsylvania.
Largest natural lake in Pennsylvania as well. Not man-made. That's Lake Wampaupack, I think. But no, it's the largest natural lake. I think when I was a kid, I used to say I owned Harvey's Lake or something like that because I was a weirdo.
Actually, there's a lake on the west side of the state, but it's part of it's Ohio.
We don't count that.
That's natural bigger than Harvey's Lake, but Harvey's Lake is an independent lake. Independently, it's the largest natural lake in the state.
Yes. So when you say that you built commercials and I know your style of building, your style of architecture, and do you design them yourself, or do you like the house over at the Meadow Lake where our family generally lives? Like, did you design that yourself, or did you just graft onto the existing structure?
I altered I ripped a lot of it down and rebuilt it, changed it to an English Tudor.
An English Tudor.
It was a mishmash. It started out as a cabin, and they ultimately ended up with a 4,000 square foot building. But they wanted a big pool room, so they knocked a couple of walls down and put a little addition on here and there. Everything was just added piece by piece. It was a summer cottage, is what it was. The doctor that owned it originally and built it had a big interest in a coal mine, and he used the coal mine carpenters off season to build the place.
Mm-hmm.
And
so when you
started it apart, and I found the porch floor underneath the dining room floor. They just kept adding to it every year. They would add a little bit more, and they end up with a fairly big building. Now it's a 6,000 square foot English Tudor.
A 6,000 square foot English Tudor. That's amazing. And so when you describe some of the rooms in the place, I describe it almost as palatial here in Seattle to some people. And especially compared to even some of the larger houses in Seattle, it's fairly large. And it's got what I describe rather as like the stretch, which is like this vast space between the end of the dining room and the bay window in the library. And it goes through the room with the fireplace and the thrones in it. And so how big is that? I've actually never asked you, how big is that stretch?
I think it's like close to 60 feet.
60 feet?
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing, actually. So when you describe your style of architecture, how would you describe your art?
I really couldn't say, actually.
Would you call it art?
I suppose. Everyone's got their own ideas.
How do you express your creativity?
I don't like to make all my own molding. It's all unique.
Tell us about that.
I make the rosettes, the flint blocks. I like to use all wood. I don't like to use composite anything anymore. Everything that seems to be able to buy is composite. It's garbage.
So, like, the manufactured, the artificial stuff, the synthetic stuff is just garbage.
As far as I'm concerned, but, cost-wise, that's what people can afford, that's what they buy.
No, that is true. I would think that there might be something to be said for natural wood, though.
A lot of the wood products you do buy, molding, it's all finger-jointed pieces. Little bitty pieces, they finger joint and stick them together, and when they're done, they paint them a solid color, and you really don't know the difference. But you can't get the natural wood look out of them. Well, you can if you want to cover, but they even put them with vinyl over the top of them. A lot of mobile homes use that. They wrap composite configurated molding that's very similar to the molding that you buy from, decent molding, a wood molding, and they wrap it with vinyl. And it's, wood grain looking vinyl, and it's still vinyl.
And you do a lot of your work by hand, is that right?
Yeah.
And so I would like you to tell me the story, if you wouldn't mind. I remember you told it to me once before of before we get into grandma and great grandma really quick. I would like you to tell me the story of there was not a craftsman home, but it was like a Pennsylvania proto craftsman home and Scotty's home across the street. And from where we were in Briarcrest. And so you told me a story about how, there was a contractor who looked at the place for some other reason, and he saw I think it was the gutter and the gutter you put on that was completely straight or something like that. Could you tell me that story?
Oh, yeah. I made it look like a southern farmhouse. Planted little, what they call them? I can't remember what the name is. But I put a big wraparound porch on it. And I think the porch, it was probably 50 feet long. And he remarked about how it was odd that the roof was perfectly level. So he had no problem getting the water to run out of the gutter.
Yeah.
And he said it was the first roof that he ever came across that was perfectly level. But I had just purchased a new laser level, so.
Well, I mean, you did have a guide though.
What's that?
In the laser level, so you had a guiding instrument, but you still did that by hand.
Yeah, oh yeah. But there's still, it was with the help of a laser level.
You realize, that that's amazing, right? Like you realize that is an amazing thing that you accomplished, and. That he was giving you, I hope that you realize he was giving you a great compliment by saying that, this is the first building I've ever come across that is perfectly level. And, you get that he was giving you a compliment, right?
I know he was giving me a compliment, but I had a lot of help from the laser level. It's not very hard to get something perfectly level.
Well, apparently is if you ask all the commercial people, though, apparently. But so I wanted to ask you really quick, if we ask that guy at least, I wanted to ask you really quick about my grandmother and my great grandmother, and a story that you told me when you said to me once, everyone in our family is special. And later in the episode, we're going to be talking about hex signs in Pennsylvania on the Barns in Pennsylvania Dutch country in Lancaster County, down near Harrisburg and stuff like that. And I was wondering if you had any insight to share, and also if you would tell the story about the potato.
Well, that was your great-grandmother. She was born with what they called a veil over her face when she was born. It's a very thin layer of skin.
I believe they call that a caul bearer, do they not?
I don't recall. She always called it a veil. And she had some psychic abilities, I guess I would call them.
Could you?
She did have all I know is when we were little kids, my brother Greg, your uncle, he was always prone to getting warts on his hands. And I remember her telling him, I stood there and watched her do it. And then years later, she did it to me because I had gotten one on the palm of my hand. And I cut the thing, I dug it out of there numerous times, and it just kept growing back. But she said, you go get a potato and cut it in half and give her the potato, and she would rub it on the wart. And then she'd give it back to you, tell you to go bury it in the yard. And you would go and bury it, and the wart would disappear. A week later, it would be gone.
That's amazing.
it's a very odd thing I mean, it happened to me too, so I don't know what she was doing, but it worked.
So when you said that she had some
I told two people that story, and they look at you like you're crazy. But
well, you're at the right audience. You're at the right audience. We're not going to be thinking that you're crazy at all. I think you're with an audience who probably had similar experiences too. What sort of psychic powers does she have? Do you remember?
Oh, she could predict things that were going to happen. And I think she made a few of them happen, actually.
How do you mean?
Well, I don't want to get into that on the air.
Oh boy! Family secrets. You're gonna say family secrets, I guess. What about Grandma? I remember having a conversation with my cousin Amy, who I don't know how serious she practiced witchcraft, but she practiced witchcraft back in the day. Or Wicca at least, and so she did tell me that our grandmother was a very special lady in her own way. Could you tell me about that?
She had a big heart. But she was Mama Bear for sure.
I would call her even a matriarch, how she sort of kept the family together. She did have a huge heart. And do you think that? I mean, I know that you have your own. It's very evident that you have your own magic when it comes to architecture, when it comes to building, and it comes to carpentry. And Melva or Manny had her magic, Grandma had hers. Did you say that the heart is where the root of the Evans magic comes from?
I would think so.
How would you describe your own?
Oh, it's hard to describe yourself.
Spoken like a true Evans. I say the same thing to people when they ask me to describe myself in Seattle. I always say it's peculiar, I think, to describe oneself. It is, isn't it? That's a very English thing.
What to think about yourself is not really, you're not sure what other people think of you.
I'm not sure if
I've had people tell me they always thought I was an arrogant bastard until they got to know me. I'm not arrogant at all with anyone.
I say the same thing to people. I'm really not arrogant. I often, I do the king thing and the sovereign of Seattle thing. I do a number of things with royalty, and a lot of what I'm doing is, it's sort of, maybe you would describe it the same way as faux arrogance, right?
I guess maybe. I'm not sure.
Would you describe me as arrogant?
No, outgoing, I think, would be a better word.
Outgoing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't really seem to care what other people think most of the time. Or you wouldn't be able to do the things you do.
Well, I can't really, because...
you care, but you really don't.
Exactly. I care, but I don't. But I do, but I don't. Is what I usually say. And I guess apples really don't fall far from the tree with us. But how we describe things, at least. But I always think that when it comes to me, I mean it's just my guess that if I were to care about what people thought of me, I would never have been able to get out of bed in the morning because I'd be, just right. And so you have to eventually learn to not care what anybody thinks about you, but, to care enough that you want to be effective in the world, and to care enough about other people, I think is more important than caring about, oneself.
Well, no one must be regarded as a nut or a whack job. So
no one wants to be a whack job.
You care to that degree. You don't want to be recognized as a local nut.
Well, that's true. That's why. Well, we have a very limited audience here in Seattle, Washington, so I think you're in the clear about being on the show. What's up?
As long as you're not hurting anyone else and you're having fun, more power to you.
I agree with that. Amen to that. Well, I mean, then again in Seattle, you get into what people describe as hurt. And sometimes, I don't know, I mean, they're between triggers and other things, it's like sometimes people tend to like not be. They seem to make mountains out of molehills. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, there's a lot of sensitive people in your neighborhood out there.
Yes, it's kind of it's an explosive combination, I think, sometimes of people who have been sort of, and maybe you can agree or disagree with me on this. I'd love to hear your opinion, but I think sometimes that my generation, or at least the generation that came right after us or something, I think that it's filled with people who are simultaneously raised to think that they should express even their negative emotions, without restraint, and they were never given any like way to channel those emotions into something productive, because the stiff upper lip, like the English thing, never really caught on in some areas. That they were always told that you should just exhibit every feeling you feel, and you have in the same time parents who don't believe in discipline raising kids in a consequence-free environment, and I think that we're sort of seeing the results of that in a lot of ways.
Well, that with the help of computers, telephones, computers.
That really didn't help anything when you think about it, at least when it comes to child rearing.
Well, when all you do is walk down the street and you see people on their telephones when they're walking down the street. I mean, it's a dangerous thing they're doing to begin with, but they occasionally, if you take the time to watch them, they'll be tripping on the crack of the sidewalk or walking off the curb.
Oh, yeah, people do that.
Really stupid things. And then you go to a restaurant and you'll see two people walk in the restaurant together. They'll sit down on either side of the table or booth, and they'll both immediately start texting or playing with their telephone. And not a word comes out of their mouth, except that they'll order their food, and in between they'll play with their phone somewhere. Like, what's the point? It's like the world's it's like they're all alone all the time.
It's like it's weird. It's weird. It's like a self-isolation.
Oh.
And I found it really interesting. It was a very liberating experience, actually. When I think you'll recall with me when I was trying to get the current apartment I have now in Seattle, and I was staying between apartments and hotels and things like that. The Belltown Inn, for instance, which is a great place. The Hotel Roosevelt, which I think is now the Teddy or the Theodore or something like that. It's a beautiful hotel. Different places. And I remember that I didn't have a cell phone voluntarily for, I think that period of time, because I remember it was about 6 months that I went voluntarily without a cell phone. And you know what I noticed? It felt like, I was the only person with my head above water, because I was the only person not looking down at the palm of my hand at like the bus stop, right? And I also noticed a very strange phenomena that I was suddenly looked at like the other in a lot of these places because I didn't have a cell phone. In fact, a person in a cell phone store when I went to I think it was a T-Mobile store, the person who is a wonderful customer sales representative otherwise, actually had LP, loss prevention, follow me around the store because she said, what kind of cell phone can we get you? And I said, actually, I don't want a cell phone. And she said, okay, well, what could we do better to have a product that you would like? And I was like, actually, no, it's just I don't want a cell phone, period. I just don't really want to have one. And that, like, for some reason sent up a red flag that the person who doesn't want a cell phone is going to steal from the cell phone store. I don't understand it.
Well, I mean, it's an absolute necessity to have one today. You can't, you would be hard pressed to find a payphone anywhere. I haven't seen one in years now. The last one was in front of the sporting goods store over in Dallas. Oh, must be 3-4 years ago. And I don't think it worked, but they owned the phone, so they just never took it out of there, but it's gone now. So somebody probably collected it. It's an antique, I imagine.
Oh, wow. Do you think that people giving up cell phones would be something that you would like to see?
Well, they couldn't because they need them. I mean, for emergencies, you need a phone.
Would you think
you can't find one somewhere else?
Would you think that other way?
You're readily handing over their telephones for you to borrow them if your phone battery goes dead or you forget it or lose it. You have a hard time getting someone to use their telephone.
You know, I will also say that that's very true, and I would like to say a thank you, by the way, to a friend of mine whom I told you about, who did that. My friend David, actually, who was incredibly kind, and without asking for a penny from me, he loaned me a wonderful phone. Actually, it was a really great phone. The Galaxy Note 9. He loaned me. And thank you on the air to David, if you're listening. That was really awesome of you, since you're right, Dad. That is very rare. What do you think is today's worst traits in today's in my generation? Like, what do you think our worst traits are?
It's hard to say what's your worst.
Oh God, is there so many that you just can't pick?
Well, there are a few.
Oh boy.
The work ethic is not the same as it used to be. I'm not sure that's a really bad thing, but I mean, people don't want to work 4 to 5.5 days a week or any longer. You have a hard time getting people to work. Sisters have a hard time getting people to work overtime, or work days to fill in for their fellow workers when they get sick or have appointments. They have always got fights over that.
I think
one will have one to do for the other, and they won't return the favor.
Oh, that's actually, and that's one thing I was going to say. You know, since COVID, really, but you know, that's another thing is that people are very apt to, you know, and I know I ask people for favors when I, you know, come into need with something. I ask people favors, but you know, I'm always I try to at least be diligent enough to return them and courteous enough to return the favor when I'm ever asked of them. And so I think that, you know, that more and more when you offer a favor to somebody, when you do a kindness for somebody, when you have a courtesy for something, like, not that we expect that to be returned, but we, you know, would hope that someone would, right? And at least be willing to return a favor in the future. But I think that's really fallen by the wayside.
Well, I rarely ever ask a favor, only because I don't want to be refused. I've done a lot of favors for lots of people, but I don't ask any. And I generally don't let people do anything for me, because I don't want to be refused.
Mm-hmm.
Because then I would lose a friend. Because once they refuse me, I wouldn't want anything to do with them. But I'm kind of a stubborn sort.
How many like how many favors, like, throughout your career, or instances of kindness or generosity? I was recalling for someone recently, our family, who owns restaurants in Pennsylvania, during one of the during the tenure of one of the restaurants, I believe it was Melrose, one of the cooks, they sort of put him up his whole life and then took care of him after he, afterward. Like, you know, it seems like generosity seems to run in our family.
That's Myron you're talking about. Yeah, Myron ended up, he died. I think he was only 44, 45 years old.
Oh, bless him.
Myron was a bad diabetic, and he lived alone down in, Missy and Tammy got him into a high-rise down in Nanticoke. And, yeah, he was living in his car.
Before that?
Pennsylvania gets rather chilly in the wintertime.
Yes.
He was in rather tough shape. His mother died, and she had paid a funeral home, you know, to bury her and do her funeral. She paid in advance years before. And he was the last living relative of his mother. She had a couple of kids. She had 2 sons that were born on really heavy-duty problems. They're both in nursing homes at a young age.
Oh, boy.
Before she died, they were put in a nursing home. She couldn't take care of them.
Yeah.
Lots of special needs. But anyway, they had a couple of sisters, I think, that passed away, too.
Yeah.
But they ended up in this nursing home. They found him dead up there.
That's a shame. But they took care of him. And so, like, is that a trait that you think, bring it back to our family for a minute. Is that a trait that you feel is common or uncommon in our family?
Oh, I think most of us have gone out of our way for different ones that were down and out. We've been down and out ourselves, so we know what it's like. Then we can help, we can. Well, just the other day, Missy was telling me that someone in the restaurant at the lake, this lady was going around the restaurant. She had a stroke. She was a stroke victim, and she was recovering. And she moved up on the development across the way up the hill there. It's rather steep up that hill. But she comes down from there. She moved in with her daughter and son-in-law. And she picks the butts out of the ashtrays outside. And she smokes them. And Missy Sutter says, you can get diseases and all that. And whether she didn't do it. And the lady, she kept coming back. She wanders around the building. She goes, they're back around the bar, and she circles the building, collect them. And anyway, the woman came in, and she drank for lunch one day, and she didn't have any money to pay for her lunch. And out the door she went. And the waitresses, they called Missy on the phone as Missy wasn't there, and they asked her what they should do. And she said, well, you're going to do nothing. What are you going to do with the lady? She doesn't have any money, don't worry about it. And anyway, somehow the son-in-law that she lives with got wind of this, and he called and asked for the manager. And he was talking to Missy. It was on a Friday, and he wanted to know what she was going to do about this, check that she didn't pay. She said, well, I'm going to do anything about it. She doesn't have any money, so I'm not really going to worry about it. It's not going to break us. So, and she said, well, I think you should have her arrested. Call the police. He wants her out of his house, is what it is. And he was arguing. Missy told her to have her arrested. And then the next day he calls back. Missy told her she's not going to do anything. She's not going to have her arrested.
Wow.
And the next day he calls back. It was Saturday. Missy was busy there. And he starts the same thing. And he said, she just came down and she's in your parking lot right now. And Missy said, I don't care. As long as he's not blocking traffic or bothering anybody, I don't care. If she wants to pick cigarette butts and smoke them and it's her health, what can I do about it? I can ask her not to do it, but I'm not going to chase her. If she wants to wander through the parking lot, that's fine, as long as she's not blocking traffic or creating a hazard. But this guy was insistent, man. Missy had to hang up on him. She said, I'm too busy to talk to you. So I can imagine that probably her daughter probably doesn't know this guy is calling.
I guess not. That's crazy. That's crazy. I mean, I didn't really think that people, I guess, maybe living in in a major city is really, made me sort of not numb, but maybe blind to instances like it, because I just don't really think it's common, at least here. Like, I think people generally mind their own business, but then again, in Seattle, there are many, I know many people who make it almost nothing but their business of nothing else's business or someone else's business. Like, I wish it were nothing else's business, but it's someone else's business usually. In Seattle, people are notorious for that, it seems, but I digress. So what do you think, can you tell me about that? Can you tell our listeners and me a little bit more about hex signs and the Pennsylvania Dutch and your experiences and what maybe you've learned about that throughout the years?
Well, I really don't know much about hex signs, Case. I know they're all over the barns back here. It's also something, as I said earlier, it's so common in Pennsylvania to see hex signs on the barns that when I moved to Washington State, I actually was asking where they were, because eventually I noticed that they weren't on any of the barns here or any of like the places that have like livestock. And my boyfriend recently, Anthony, as you know, is from Montana, and I asked him about hex signs there, and he looked at me like I had 6 heads, and he was like, "What are hex signs?" And I was like, "Wow, it really isn't out here." So I guess it's not something that ever really made it out west. What else can you tell me about the Pennsylvania Dutch? I really don't know a lot about them, Case. Supposedly we have some relatives of the Pennsylvania Dutch.
Could you say again? Your call was breaking up there for a minute. Could you say that again?
I said, we have some Pennsylvania Dutch in our family way back. So your great-grandmother told me. And we also had some Indian, too, along the way. I'm not sure what tribe they were from, but...
Do you believe that that she might have... Where do you think she learned how to, her her gifts, let's call it. Where do you think she learned to do that? From her grandmother, or maybe from the Pennsylvania Dutch side?
From her mother.
From her mother. So it's like it's a taught from parent to child.
Yep.
Interesting. Do you know of any, and what of other abilities or that were special or powers or something like that? What were her other special qualities?
Oh, everybody loved your great grandmother. She could charm a snake, just skin off a snake.
Interesting. That's very interesting. It's very interesting to me. Well, Dad, I'm thrilled that you have elected to come on the show, and thank you so much for doing so. And I hope that you are aware that I personally am taking this opportunity to honor my father and, follow that particular commandment, not part, but commandment of the Bible, to honor my parents. And you are first, and I'm going to be doing Mom next if she's willing. Probably not, but she's probably wouldn't come on the show. But thank you so much for coming on the show and giving me the opportunity to talk about you and some of the amazing work that you have done. And for those of you who, because my dad's a little modest, I hope everybody knows that if you go and see any of the commercial buildings that my father has built, if you were, I don't think our family will ever open up, Meadow Lake to the public for anything really, but I think that if you were to, you would see these, livable and live-inable works of art and business that are just truly spectacular. Like there is a ballroom over at the lake that rivals the East Room of the White House, and it really is truly spectacular. And Meadow Lake is truly palatial. It is an amazing. I was wondering if you could, before you go, I was wondering if you would be very kind and telling us, what's your career, whatever you consider to be like a career high, like how many buildings, or what's the biggest building, or what are you most proud of having done and accomplished in your career so far?
Probably the building, the restaurant at the lake, the restaurant, the bar, the ballroom, and all that. That was probably I think 13,000 square feet.
13,000 square
Pretty
feet.
good sized building.
So 13,000 square feet. That's 13,000 square feet.
Yeah.
Wow, by hand. Wow. And how many? And actually, here's a better one. How long did it take you? And with how many people, and how long did it take you to build that? Myself included, if you want to. Actually, don't include me. Don't include me. I didn't do much. But how many people, and how long did that take you?
I really don't remember.
I think it was if I'm just guessing, 6 years or something like that, right?
When the hell I start there building?
I remember that the old storm door that was 2000 and that was 2006 because Rendell was running for governor.
Yeah, but it was a span of 5 years to do the building, but I didn't stay there to do the building. I worked down a few months here and there. In fact, the zoning shut me down for over a year out there.
Oh, wow.
It was over a money issue with them. They just wanted me to pay them for inspections, and I had already paid the state for the inspections, so there was really no place for them or nothing for them to do. Harvey's Lake had subbed out the job of the building inspectors to a private concern from down by Lebanon, Pennsylvania. And these guys came up here from there, and they kind of screwed up all the new construction out there because they wanted.
These guys came down from Lebanon. It came up from Lebanon, Pennsylvania. What was their private interest?
Well, they had a contract with Harvey's Lake to do all their inspections.
Oh.
Well, they looked at the UCC building code, the Universal Building Code,
mm-hmm.
And when they did that, they had to opt in or opt out. Either come up with their own zoning, their own building inspectors, or hire a outside third party to do it. and they signed a contract with a third party. And the third party, they allowed them to rewrite their building code. They put a bunch of amendments to the UCC code, so I complied with all of them, but unfortunately, I wasn't going to pay them for doing inspections. And they weren't happy about it because they had spent a lot of money setting this thing up to do the inspections for Harvey's Lake. I
Gotcha.
had already paid Labor and Industry with the state to do mine prior to that. That's who you used before they passed the UCC building code.
I was just curious, yeah. Well, anyway, Dad,
All money.
do you have any thoughts on any thoughts at all on that you would like to share with a potentially a global audience?
Do I have any thoughts?
Any
Yeah.
thoughts you'd like to share? Anything you'd like to say? Anything at all? What would you like to say?
I don't like Seattle that much. It's just too wet most of the time. There's a lot of unfriendly people out there.
Fair point.
Like, I can say good morning to lots of people walking down the sidewalk, and they don't even smile at you, and they don't reply. I don't understand that. It puts me in a better frame of mind when I say good morning to people and they respond.
You know, I think that's really changed. I really think, and you know what? When I'm down and out, you know, like this past week, I've actually had to ask the help of several neighbors and more than a few friends off, like who aren't in the building. I like to say off site, but aren't in the building. Because I've been, you know, going through some personal issues. I had a debit card this week because I lost my debit card, I lost my ID, and I didn't have a cell phone all at the same time, everybody. And that was a really fun experience. It's also the reason why we didn't have an episode last week. But we got it all sorted, and I couldn't have gotten through it if it weren't for my dad. And I couldn't have gotten through any of, actually, the past several years if it weren't for you. And I couldn't have gotten through it without the help of several neighbors. And I just wanted to give shout outs really briefly to Shay, Mikey, to Malika, to David, to Marcus, to Anthony, and to Sean and Amos as well, for being such awesome stand-up people, and for going, and of course my dad, thank you for going out of your way to help me during both this and especially in my dad's case, every other crises that's happened in the past couple of years, including COVID. And so I'm taking this opportunity to say thank you to all of you, and how wonderful and how much you are all loved by me actually could not really be adequately put into words. And I know that might be somewhat overused recently, and I'm sorry if I'm potentially the cause of that. I think I started that trend, actually. But if I did, it's a good trend to start because it's accurate, and I mean it with all my heart. I am really happy that I've surrounded myself and am lucky enough to have been born into such a generous and such a wonderful family as the family I'm from, and those who I share blood with. And I am even as lucky to have surrounded myself with friends who are a sort of chosen family. I look at many of them as an extension of my family, insofar as, you know, they look out for their own, and they have, I think it's maybe taken me a while to see it, but have really admitted me as one of their own, and I them. And I just wanted to say thank you all so very much from the bottom of my heart. I hope you don't mind the thanks on the show. But thank you guys so very much for being just great human beings and wonderful people. You know, there's a saying that I have. You know, I know that we have a saying in our family of tenacity, Dad. I know that's like our motto, right?
Hey, never give up.
Never give up. No, never give up. No, we don't. We all have to give up on our body. I remember that speech you gave me. I said, you're not going to be the first quitter in our family. And that really actually hit home. It really did. Or not hit home, but like, it really, like, it struck a chord with me. And, you know, I also would say that, you know, not to let that idea ever die out. And also, Optimus Maximus has been my new thing recently. You might have seen it on Facebook, Dad. But it's been to optimize and maximize. Optimize, take the good and make it great. Maximize, you know, make it the best grade it can be. And then exceed that. You know, like, like take a good thing and turn it into something great, because good things, they say good things come to an end, but they don't have to, because they can be turned into great things, and great things can last forever.
Well, that's true. But say some things I say never give up. I never give up if you're in the middle of a project, or if you're doing whatever, and halfway through it you decided this is too much work, I give up. Well, it depends on what you're talking about. If you're talking about fixing an old rusty car that's rotted from one end to the other, it's time to throw in the sponge. But most things, never give up. Some things you have to throw. You have to throw them away. Some things just aren't worth saving.
How do you tell what is worth saving and what is not worth saving?
Oh, I don't know. When I look at in my business, if something's rotted, you have to replace it. It's rotted, bent. If it's steel and it's bent, you can't straighten it out. It's not that you're dealing with structural stuff, and you get rot on some of that stuff too. Depends on where you're putting any of this material. I'm just saying some things aren't worth saving, but most things just never give up on what your ambition is.
I agree.
If you decide you want to be a plumber, electrician, or a doctor or lawyer, you just never give up.
Lord knows we need more plumbers and we need more electricians, but I'm not sure if we need more lawyers, though. So I think I might have made a decent one.
Well, we could use a few good ones.
That's true.
I'm pretty sure all the ones in Washington are dropouts from the legal society.
Wait, which Washington, state or D.C.?
D.C. I'm referring to.
All right, cool. You'll save me a protest mob when I get outside.
The biggest part of the politicians out there are lawyers. That's a sad state of affairs.
I actually had someone in Seattle on a bus recently. I took a bus, and I happened to take the express line recently to another part of the city I usually go to. And excuse me. Pardon me, everybody. I was yawning. I'll edit that bit out. And I ran into this gentleman who said to me something rather interesting. He said that rich people making decisions on behalf of poor people who have never themselves ever before been poor for the best interest of the poor is the dumbest decision that's ever been made in the history of the United States.
Well, unfortunately, we've made it possible for poor people to get elected and go to Washington and then become rich people on the taxpayers' back. It's just not right.
And then it seems like now if you're a poor person trying to go to Washington, D.C., your best bet is a tour bus if you can afford it. But it seems like, that window of opportunity, because of, prohibitively difficult financial bars to meet. Like, I'm not a corporation. Like, how am I going to run for Congress, right? But I will say about Seattle, a couple of things that Seattle does right. Seattle does really right. And one of them was the democracy vouchers. Back before I became a monarchist, and I don't make my political positions known these days, but I can't really deny where I stood on issues that I was previously public about. And I was very much in favor of the democracy vouchers. In fact, I voted for them. Whereas it's a public pool of money that they give to candidates that all want to participate in the system, and you agree to campaign finance limits, campaign spending limits, and you get these vouchers, and that they give out to all the voters of Seattle, and you can spend your democracy vouchers on any candidate you want if you're a registered voter in Seattle. And I remember the candidates I gave my first democracy vouchers to. I was very proud of that. But it's a fabulous system, and it seems like the candidates that, and because it's Seattle though, it seems like the candidates that don't participate in that system get repercussion at the polls because they don't play ball with the democracy voucher program. Because then it's like, oh well, why aren't you? What campaign shadiness are you into that you're trying to hide there, sir? It's like that. But we'll see with the city council elections coming up that I believe we have city council elections coming up. We're going to see with that, I guess.
Casey, every time I turn around, people start talking about the government and politics, and you hear lots of them make the same remark about taxes. And they want to, no, this guy's going to tax the rich. He's going to make the rich guy pay. Well, you can never make the rich guy pay. Jimmy Carter did that. He tried to make the rich guy pay, and it didn't work out for him either. Because the rich guy can stop growing his business. He can lay people off and downsize. He can also raise his prices. So whatever this is my version of trickle down economics. They raise taxes on the rich, it trickles down to everybody. Everybody down the line pays more money. So you can't raise taxes on the rich. The rich already pay a good portion of taxes anyway.
And, I was thinking about, and to bring it back to Seattle for a second, I was trying to tell someone about this, a person who's very much in line with one of the parties, the Democratic Party. And, he's sort of like a lockstep voter with them. And so he was trying to tell me about, how the Democratic Party is better for poor people than the Republican Party is. And I said, well, hold on a second here. Let's just walk this through. And I'm just devil's advocate here because I'm a monarchist and I'm impartial. I'm just asking questions. But that the sugar tax, for instance, which he was all in favor, he was talking about the sugar tax. And I said, that hurts the poorest the most because the rich can afford, the sugar, right? But, the poor can't. And all you're really doing is taking a simple joy of a soda and making it just that much more unaffordable for them. And I remember when I was down on my last dollar, I actually couldn't get my Coke after that passed. And it's just like the one simple joy I had, during my day, which was really awful. And, I couldn't get a Coke. And he said, well, you shouldn't be having sugar anyway. It's bad for you. And I said, you're not and I said, sir, you don't know me. And you aren't anyone to tell me what is good for me and what is bad for me. You don't live in my body, and every person is different. And then I said, I happen to notice, however, that aspartame, which is the sweetener in diet soda, which causes cancer, everybody, and it's proven to cause cancer. That's not, a wing-ding, wing-bat, opinion. That's from, the New England Journal of Medicine. Aspartame causes cancer. That's not taxed in Seattle. And then he had nothing to say. So I asked him, well, I'm just asking the question. Is it really that, you're saying to poor people, hey, you don't get something nice like sugar because you're too poor for it, but here, have some cancer tax-free? And I said, how is that a progressive place? And he had no answer for me.
Well, that's like they beat the drum for solar cars, or electric cars. And electric cars have to be charged by the same system that they're outlawing to begin with. So are you really gaining anything here?
Well, I'm not sure where they actually charge.
Disposing of the batteries. The batteries are unaffordable. The cars are unaffordable to the average person. Rich people could buy the high-priced Teslas and some of those other models that are out there, but they solve the same problems. The battery only lasts so long. The battery's a fortune to replace.
I don't even know how they charge them. I don't even know how they. Can you charge them from your house or something?
No, you have to get a special deal to charge them. They have charging stations they're setting up around the country to charge them, but they're going to charge you money to charge your car. There's no free ride, and you're going to pay mileage tax. Which these electric cars that go and you're paying mileage tax.
Wow! So we're generating all that. In Washington State, we have all these solar programs in Washington State. And my late partner, Jaron, God rest his soul, his family, they were really good they had solar panels on the roof of their house. They were all about that program in Pennsylvania. And after a while, and I'm not plugging what my or any other state does in this show. I'm just telling a story about Jaron for organically here. That Jaron and his family, they were generating more power at some point than, they were consuming because there's only the three of them living in that big house. And so, the state owed them money and would cut them a check, so their, electric bill turned into their electric surplus, like their electric bonus, and they would get money for it.
That's the power company that pays them for the excess energy they supply the power grid.
Yes, that's exactly true. And so I think Washington State had a special like state program for it that they're always advertising to me on YouTube about, or at least back before I got YouTube. I went to premium and it's really great with no ads, but they were advertising to me this Washington State solar program, and every ad that I saw that, time is running out because the Senate did blah, blah, blah. And, to get into the Washington solar program. And I guess what they're trying to do is generate a surplus of electricity. And it's just amazing to me that they would like to charge money for these electric cars and these stations that they're putting up for the people that do buy them. And there are a number of people here in Seattle that have like Teslas. I hear them backing up all the time, which if you haven't heard a Tesla like go into reverse and back up, it sounds like a spaceship. It's like this strange sort of spaceship, like you look it up on YouTube in a minute, but it's this strange sort of spaceship sound. And there's one that parks right outside my apartment every day, and around 4 o'clock I can hear him come home, and he's like like that, right? And it's like this. I was like, what is that sound? After a while, and someone said that's a Tesla. And there's a lot of Teslas in Seattle, but I also think it's appalling that they're like, we live in a state where there's so many people who are getting, solar panels now because of the state program, that they're generating more power than they're actually consuming. And, they're going to charge people for that power. Like, why doesn't that go into the surplus for the cars that they're also trying to buy?
No, you're not going to have a free ride no matter what you do. A free ride doesn't exist in this world.
Unless it's COVID. Unless it's COVID, then you get money for nothing.
If you have electric, the only free ride you would have would be a bicycle.
And even that's not free. My friend Marcus actually commented today as we were walking past a bike store just earlier that it's, $350 for a bike, and then in Seattle you got the hills. And so if you want to put a motor on it, it's even more.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying that the electric grid isn't. If everyone had an electric car, you wouldn't be able to turn the lights on in your house. We don't generate enough power.
Yeah, well,
look at I can look out and see the windmills on the mountains behind Harvey's Lake over here, and there's just not enough of them. I don't think they could litter all the hills and take away all the view, and they still would have enough power generated by the windmills.
I think would really be helpful. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
What's that?
No, go ahead.
I'm sure that it's a help, but it's not anywhere near what they were anticipating getting. I don't know. I've been to California to see all of them down in the Mojave Desert. The whole place is littered with windmills. And I don't know whether, I guess I'm not sure what percentage of the electricity that California uses comes from those windmills, but
I was thinking what really could help people. I think when people eventually, and it'll probably come from people and just trends happening naturally, that someday there's going to be, everything has a tide and everything has a season. I think the internet has a season. I think it'll always probably be around in some form, but I think that at some point there's going to be a massive trend, like a retraction of the tide that people are going to want to, I'm starting to see the seeds of it. And I was talking about this a couple of years ago that, eventually people are going to want to disconnect from the internet because technology, I said, is going to become so pervasive. And this was like 5 or 6 years ago before all this, now you need a phone to get around stuff. Back then it was still more or less optional. And so, I said to people, people are going to want to, disconnect from the internet so bad in the future. And they're going to want to go back to things like books and writing. And, they're going to really long and be nostalgic for that life before the internet. And so I think that you're starting to see, I'm starting to see fewer and fewer friends, on Facebook. I'm starting to see, and not because I'm like losing friends or they're blocking, but they're actually deleting their Facebooks and they're saying, hey, I'm going offline. I'm disconnecting, I think you're going to start to see more of that.
But, artificial intelligence is a scary thing. And oddly enough, the movies that you've seen in the past about machines taking over, Battlestar Galactica.
I was just thinking that. The Cylons, man. I've seen Galactica. This doesn't end well.
This is just not the imagination of some writer. Gene Roddenberry had lots of ideas that came to fruition.
I just really wish that we had developed not the base stars. I wish we developed the battle stars so we can eventually fight. I wish we had the Battlestar before we had the Cylon.
Unfortunately, it's not going to be that way in real life, so.
But then again, you never know. But hey, everybody, this has been my first ever radio interview with my dad. I'm so happy to have him on the show. And Dad, I love you. Happy upcoming Father's Day, which is part of your gift here. I wanted to showcase you and your talent and tell you I love you in a very unique way. And so I love you very much. Thank you for becoming part of our show. We're going to we missed 2 breaks. We're going to have to take an extended break right now, but that's okay. We're going to be back right after this. You are listening to Gary and Casey on the Alchemy Podcast, and just stay tuned. We'll be right back. You are listening to me, Casey, and this is the Alchemy Podcast on the Listen Up Podcast Network.
Thank you for listening to Casey and the Alchemy Podcast, broadcast on the Listen Up Podcast Network. Your source for news, entertainment, education, thoughtful shows, and commentary programs. We hope that you enjoy Alchemy and that you continue to listen up.
Aloha, I'm Yuji Okamoto. I own a restaurant called Kona Kitchen here in Seattle, Washington. I've been an actor for almost 30 years now, playing mostly bad guys. But I'm not really...
Punch that jerk who got here.
Come on, let me show you around. Here I am, Johnny Tsunami, playing his dad. See? Who says I can't be a good guy?
Hey, aren't you the bully from...
Here at Kona Kitchen, we serve a variety of local dishes. Kalua pig, lau lau, loco moco, Portuguese sausage, and you gotta try our awesome homemade macaroni salad.
Hey, that is awesome mac salad.
You see?
So how was everything today?
Oh, it's great. It's great. Look, I got my tooth knocked out by the guy from Karate Kid 2. At Kona Kitchen, we're very family friendly. We love having kids here.
Excuse me, aren't you the bad guy from the movie? Can I have your autograph?
Sure, kid.
Thanks, mister.
So come to Kona Kitchen and enjoy some good local grinds.
I will get... Come on!
How long you in for? A little less than 2 minutes. You didn't deserve this. I probably did. I gotta go. Stay strong.
Get closer to the action with Seattle Crack and Scratch.
Fly away, little bird.
You could win $50K or glass seats.
This fall, come out to Key Arena in Seattle, Washington to catch the new rising force in the NBA, the Seattle Seamen. Coached by head coach Jason Kidd and star players including Giannis Antetokounmpo, Bradley Beal, DeMarcus Cousins, Kyrie Irving, and Jimmy Butler. Ticket prices will soon be available for group tickets. Please call 1-800-555-5555. For all their business inquiries, contact Eric Anderson at 1773-706-6074. Thank you and have a great day.
Hi, Jesse James here, and not only did I write and record the music for this ad, but I'm taking up the heavy burden of running for Seattle City Council Position 8. This last year has totally gutted our local music scene and destroyed so many of our beloved small businesses. I am here to present an alternative to the elitist agenda of our current city government. So if you want real change or just agree with me that the sugar tax needs to go and card casinos should be legalized, vote Jesse James this August 3rd primary. Good day. Paid for by Jesse James from Seattle. This James from Seattle.com.
King 5 News, Seattle.
Amazon employees flooded this area right next to the Spheres. They're out here for about an hour, starting around noon, chanting for change and voicing their frustrations with the company.
People from across the company came together to say enough is enough.
Hundreds of Amazon employees walked out on Wednesday. We're together, braver now than ever. Hoping to write a new chapter in the company's history. After becoming frustrated with how things are being run by the corporate giant.
We aren't just going to stand by and let this happen to us. We are going to be proactive.
Pamela Hyder has worked at Amazon for 8 years in response to the company's return to office mandate, which requires workers to come back into the office 3 days a week. She created the Remote Advocacy channel on the company's Slack network. It now has more than 30,000 employees logging complaints.
Workers deserve a say in how they work that best fits their lives and lifestyles. We all have such diverse lives and diverse lifestyles, and a one-size-fits-all mandate just does not work for us.
The company's carbon footprint was another reason for the walkout. Employees cited the company's reliance on fossil fuels to deliver its packages internationally.
Emissions, climate, time to act.
Emissions, climate, time to act.
Stand together. Don't turn back. One more.
Many workers told me if things don't change, they'll consider leaving, but hope it doesn't come to that.
This is our company.
This is our company.
I'm so proud of all of us. Yes.
I did reach out to Amazon for a response on today's walkout, and I also reached out to them to find out how they plan on addressing some of their employees' concerns or requests, but I've yet to hear back. For now, live in Seattle, Brady Wakayama, King 5 News.
More than that, you see, it's more than that. Bound together like a law of the rule. Every bit of space between the sun and the moon. Action, reaction, girl, that's how we move. It ain't up to me, it ain't up to you. Alchemy, alchemy. You and me is alchemy.
We are back. It's happening indeed. Hello, welcome back to Alchemy. Hello. I don't know if anybody's noticed, but I have gone back to the original theme song. I don't know why. I really love this song, and it has the name of the show in it. And so welcome back. I wanted to thank my dad for being a wonderful guest, and I also have to thank an installation wizard. I will say that it's been several hours, actually, since I've recorded the first half of the show for broadcast. And we usually don't broadcast live. That'll actually change next week. We're going to be doing next week, because now I have the equipment to do it, a live video feed of the show, as well as the audio podcast that you're accustomed to. So that'll be pretty cool. But, I have an installation wizard to thank. I don't know if we call each other boyfriends anymore or not. That's been a topic I've avoided on the show. Or maybe he's trying to call himself my boyfriend. I don't know. I think that he is a very cryptic man. in my boyfriend Anthony, but I have to thank an installation wizard because, and I'll tell you why. I don't know if he saw that I posted the joke earlier on Facebook or not. The one that is actually a joke from several years ago. That I decided to revivify today. And so, I don't know if he heard it or not, but I do know that he's an installation wizard. And so, if you'll recall with me the joke from the beginning of the show, and so the witch opened the door, and on the other side of the door was the installation wizard. Get it? Like installation wizard, like Windows. And then she says, I'm surprised you didn't use the Windows. Well, my significant other, Anthony, tried to call my phone several times. I had fallen asleep with my cat. And I was given some great advice by a cat specialist who, my cat's been losing some of his hair on his head, and it's due to stress. And not being given enough attention and not really feeling he has a purpose or a need or that he's wanted. And that's important for him. He's 9 years old. And so he's at that time of his life where that's going to be very important. And so I resolved, I can't tell the cat to get off the bed while I'm recording a podcast or something like that. Sebastian and his health are very important to me. And so is Anthony's health and well-being as well. He has a tendency, or had a tendency in the past, to bring computer equipment and things like that here, and it made a very big mess, and it sort of frustrated me. And so that's sort of fallen to the wayside a bit, but I'm very cranky when you wake me up in the middle of the night. I was sleeping with Sebastian. We had fallen asleep cuddling, and I hear a rock at the window. And so I shout, door, door, using the window, right? And so the installation wizard used a window, and then he comes into the door. I don't look up. I'm just sort of irritated that I just woke up. And I'm a morning person. I'm just not a I'm not, if I'm sleeping in the middle of the night, don't wake me up person. I'm one of those, though. Don't do that. That's never a good idea. But it was only about maybe a half hour ago, too. I was snippy with him. And he mentioned to me, what should I do with this printer? I brought this all the way here from wherever he brought it from. It sounded like a long way, actually. And I was like, yeah, you can leave that in the hallway, when he asked. And it didn't sound like a printer when you put it down. It sounded like something with sort of a papery sort of side to it. And I was like, that's weird. Did he bring paper too? Whatever. And so I explained to him about Sebastian's health, and he just sort of wanted to talk about a phone charger, and I, being irritable in the middle of the night, snapped at him needlessly and unwarrantably, and I'll tell you why. Because, well, I said to him, essentially, you have your priorities a little messed up. If Sebastian's health and well-being is precisely what I'm trying to focus on here, he's the priority. If you're going to prioritize a printer and a phone charger over Sebastian, our cat, and I cautiously use the word our cat, then you can go. And we've been having we've had easier times recently, rather. And so I hear him go, and he said something to me that I can paraphrase as, even though I'm not supposed to paraphrase people anymore because I'm seeing a therapist who says I'm not supposed to paraphrase people. I'm supposed to quote them exactly, but I was half asleep and I didn't exactly remember what he said. But it's essentially like, you're making a dumb mistake, just so you know. And he left. And so I didn't think much of it because I took him at his word that was a printer outside. Well, I go out and there is no printer to be found. And so on my way outside to smoke a cigarette, because I'm still a filthy smoker, I'm actually kind of happy I did smoke that cigarette. I go outside to smoke a cigarette to edit the show. And I'm editing the show. I smoke my cigarette. I have another, which I usually don't do, but I was into the editing. And I come back inside and I notice something in the underside of the stairwell. It's a kitty bed. A kitty bed. Or at least a small animal-sized bed. Beautiful. In great condition. Who would give that away, I thought. And so I go to pick it up, and as I picked it up, the underside of it brushed against my leg, which had this papery sort of sound to it. And that's when I realized he didn't bring a printer. He said printer, but I didn't look up when he came in. I was still laying down. He didn't bring a printer. He brought a cat bed for Sebastian. The installation. So here's the actual end of the joke, and the joke's on the witch, really. And so the witch answered the door for the installation wizard who was there to install a cat bed without knowing that we went to the cat expert today. And was here from Hex Support. And the witch got sort of pissy that he used the Windows. It was supposed to be a window. Remember, in Windows, you would get the installation wizard from the installation CD from whatever you're trying to install in Windows. That was the joke. It was a tech joke, sort of leading up to the Amazon protests that happened rather historically, actually, at least for Seattle. They happened here. Amazon's usually the subject of protests rather than the protestors, which is, by the way, historic, and we will talk about that next week. But I have to skip that. Anthony bumps Amazon in the news this week for us here at Alchemy because I have to say thank you to the installation wizard because he really is a wizard. I didn't tell him anything about Sebastian before he got here. How he knew that? That's part of his magic. And that's why I love him. That is exactly why I love him. And so, I hope that he will accept this humble, hopefully boyfriend's apology. And if not boyfriend, then I certainly missed out on someone truly spectacular. But I hope he'll forgive me if I took him at his word and thought it was a printer. And I think maybe understandable in the printer protest, maybe a little understandable. But had I known that it was a cat bed for Sebastian Anthony, you would have had phone chargers and more. So maybe I could put the CD-ROM into whatever I put the CD-ROM into and instead run the installation wizard. Trust the installation wizard. That's the lesson of the week. Trust the installation wizard. everybody. If you have an installation wizard in your life, God bless you. And the gods, too. But mighty Aphrodite, did she send me a good one? A great one. I'm smiling now. Oh man, you know, just as a personal note, I shouldn't actually say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. On a personal note, I said to Anthony in a message, which I'm not sure he read, make me swoon. And you little bastard, you succeeded. You have me swooning right now. Swooning and even blushing. And smiling. With my lips upcurved in like that, like, I can't help it but smile sort of way. Something tells me I'm not going to sleep very well tonight, and something tells me that I have more work to do around the house to make Anthony happy. Something tells me that that's going to be what the rest of my night's going to look like now. Leave it to him, by the way. Leave it to him to surprise you. And that's actually another thing I love about him. He always surprises. Just when you think, like, the darkest hour has come, Casey has tried to save the day valiantly, but the day is just, overtaken by the night, and the night is too dark for Casey to see. Who comes to the rescue with a flashlight and a light bulb? Anthony. If Casey saves the day, then Anthony surely saves the night. This has been Alchemy. I hope that you've enjoyed our show, and we'll see you next week.
So much more to us than memories and time. A cosmic synergy that can't be defined. We're twin spirits with one mind. We're twin spirits with one mind. Oh, alchemy, alchemy. You and me is alchemy. It's happening, it's happening. It's alchemy.
Hi, this is Casey from the Alchemy Podcast, and you're listening to Laurent Lombard, and this is his song, You're My Love. Don't you love it? I do. We also love that you're part of this wonderful program. As a listener, thank you so much for listening. We hope that you have liked today's show. We also want to thank so much my father for coming on as our guest, our first inaugural guest, and we also want to thank Sebastian for being the best cuddle buddy that there is, and Anthony, our installation wizard. And with a team like that, we can never fail. So, Casey will save the day, and Anthony will surely save the night. You can write it down. Stop the presses! Stop the presses, I say! Do they still have presses anymore? I know print media is but do they still have presses? They do! They do still have presses, yes! Alright, well, stop the presses! And thank all of you for being part of the show this week. In ways both direct and indirect. We love you. From everyone here at Alchemy, thank you so much for being part of this wonderful show. We will see you next week. If you have listened this far, congratulations. And if you're the first person to come to me and message me the word classic soul songs, then you will win a prize next week. And I'll mention your name on the show. Ooh, isn't it fun? Don't you get fun prizes when you listen all the way through and stay through the end credits? Isn't it cool? Yeah, it is. Thank you for listening to Alchemy. See you next week.